Pac-12 championship game. UCLA is at Stanford. It's a rematch from last week. Stanford is an 8.5-point favorite in this game. I'm going with Stanford. I'm laying the 8.5. I think Stanford has been a much different team when they brought Hogan in as quarterback. Nunez was he was a nice player, but he refused to throw the ball down the field. You have to stretch a defense. Stanford was always loaded up with a lot of muscle, offensively and defensively. I think Stanford is the right side in this game. Another thing I want you to notice, and if you guys watched last week's game, and I know you did for sure, Hundley was pretty effective early. He kept getting hit and hit and hit, and that took a toll on him over the course of the game. We're coming back Friday, a day short. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference, but I think he's going to expect the same thing, and I think he's going to be a little tentative in the pocket. Stanford was extremely physical with him, and I think if you look at Stanford over the course of the season, over the course of the last couple of seasons, they are just a superior defensive team. Listen, I give nothing poor on UCLA. I think they've done a great job coming from where they were. Moore has done terrific. But you look at Stanford's defense against the run, a little more than 2 yards a carry they give up, 70-some yards a game they give up. They're an extremely physical team. I think Hundley's going to get a little beat up during the course of this game. I like Stanford a lot in this one. Being at home, too, is going to be a big help.
Yeah. And I think you hit on the key, a couple things there. First of all, the quarterback change. I don't think the line's quite really been adjusted. There's no question that Stanford's a better team with Hogan in there. He's much more efficient, and now you can't just play the run. Before they were playing the run. Last week, Taylor had 142 yards running for Stanford because they couldn't just put 9 guys in the box. So, and also what that does, it also helps rests the defense a little. The offense being on the field more makes the defense even more effective. And the key to the game last week, their defense allowed UCLA couldn't run the ball.
You can't run the ball.
They couldn't run on them, and that caused a lot of problems for UCLA. And if basically Moore is going to have to come up with and I'm not sure how he's going to be able to come up with a new game plan here. But what Stanford did last week defensively, UCLA was a little lost out there.
That's the thing. Franklin's got to rush the football for them to have any success. For Hundley to be able to do his thing, and when Franklin has 65 yards, it's not going to get it done. And you touched on a great point. Stephon Taylor, and I said in last week's video, you're not going to stop him, but you got to contain him. I know that's an overused phrase, but it's so true. If you're going to beat Stanford, you got to make Hogan beat you. And the kid's going to get better and better, but I don't think he could beat you on his own. But having Stephon Taylor there keeps the defenses honest. And if he's going to rush for another 150 yards, it's going to be a long afternoon for UCLA. Stanford's the more competent team. Now they get him at home. It'll be a celebratory event for Stanford in Palo Alto. So I don't want anything to do with UCLA. I took him as a home dog last week, +3. I'm not going to take him as a road dog here.
And that was not a bad play. You were probably getting the best number. I wanted to mention one thing, too. You talked about the X's and O's. Moore's going to have to come up with something new. I got to tell you, Shaw is an excellent coach for Stanford. I'm a Stanford fan.
Right.
I hope he stays there for a while. I really do. But if he goes on to the pros, do not be surprised. Moore is a good coach, too. But I think this goes beyond X's and O's. You're not going to be able to beat Stanford
too
by
physical, man.
You're not going to outsmart Stanford, and right now Stanford is too physical. They have the talent.
I think they're peaking right now.
I think they are, too. All right, we talked about it enough. Let's go ahead. I'm going to make it official. I like Stanford -8.5 at home over UCLA. To tell you the truth, I think Stanford's at least 8 points better on a neutral field. This game being in Stanford is really going to help. I think Stanford beat UCLA up a little bit physically last week. I think they'll be carrying some of those bruises with them this week, not only physically, but mentally, too. They know they're going to be in for a very tough physical game. Stanford is I believe, a much superior team offensively and defensively. 8's a lot of points to lay, but I think it's the right side in this one.
And Chris, I'm a big boxing MMA fan, and when someone beats you up and doesn't just win, but they beat you up, you always see the next time they meet, the guy that got beat up is just a little bit tentative. You remember when you take a beating, and you made a great point. I didn't think of that UCLA is going to walk out there being like, now we got to go through 60 minutes of this again.
Well, I'm not an MMA fan particularly, but I got beat up plenty when I was in high school. I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Okay, coming up next, we're gonna go to Chuck. He's gonna give us his best bet. This is a real barn burner of a game.
Hey, it's championship week.
It's championship week. Louisiana, Lafayette, and Florida Atlantic. But you know what they say? Listen, you lay 11-10, you pick a winner. They all pay the same. I don't care if it's Alabama and Georgia or Lafayette. You know, that's what we're here to do. You can see all our videos at pregame.tv.